articulate why the people that live in the land of Israel are not the Jews. I literally did a G podcast for 3 years, destroying anybody and everybody attempting to debate that topic. Because you can't do the color of their skin. It's not a good argument. It's a horrible argument, actually. That's what the Hebrew Israelites were doing. All right? So you keep talking about Palestine, and you keep talking about that God had a covenant relationship with Jacob. He made promises to Jacob that has to be fulfilled. If I was an atheist, let's say I wasn't even an atheist, right? Let's say I was, let's see something here, Matt Dillahunty, and I decided to listen to your stream, and be like, hey, you're a Christian? Yeah, I believe that Jesus is Hamashiach. Really? So that means you believe all of the prophecies were fulfilled concerning Jesus. Oh, absolutely. All of the prophecies were fulfilled. Isn't Jesus supposed to come back to be the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords? Who is he coming back to be the King of Kings to?
This guy thinks Matt Dillahunty would be listening to Shanny anyway. Okay. I don't think that's the argument he would make.
If all the Jews are dead, who exactly is he coming back to? And then you'll see them convert to atheism. Something I think that I'm not going Draven's channel to talk about this, but I think there's legitimate arguments that can be made that this woman never left atheism. That this woman is literally masquerading and pretending to be something she is not. All right? But that's neither here nor there, Shanny. You keep talking about Jacob being a thief, wanting to steal, wanting to steal what Esau had or whatever. There's a prophecy in the book of Genesis that says that God is going to love Jacob and he's going to hate Esau. And there were specific reasons on why that happened. God already saw what Jacob would do to Esau. And I think later on, Jacob was punished for that. But where are you getting this nonsense? Shanny, oh, Jacob was this and Israel this. You're being totally anti-Semitic in everything that you're saying. Jesus.
Probably from an online preacher. Hey, Daniel Berry Sports Highlights. Happy Sunday. Good to see you. I'm doing well. I actually came on because John and Vaughn were streaming, and I was going to see if I could cover a little bit of that, but he ended it abruptly. I don't usually cover John and Vaughn, but then I saw G-Man was also live, so.
This was of the tribe of Judah. The Apostle Paul was of the tribe of Benjamin. All of the apostles were part of some Israeli tribe. They are the sons and great grandsons of Jacob. And you talk about them like they're not special. You talk about them like God never made a covenant relationship with them, or that God didn't desire to save them or anything like that. So that you can get people to click on what you're talking about on your channel. See, Christianity is not Christianity to you. Christianity is just a means to make money. You're no better than the Benny Hinn's and the Creflo Dollars that are out there trying to go out there and scheme people out of their money. You're no better than that. And Jason, you ain't no different.
Yeah, definitely not better than that.
I don't know if it's the Delta 8.
At least those guys can do tricks and stuff.
I don't know if it's the weed, the heroin, or whatever it is that you guys are on these days that's causing that brain damage or whatever that you're displaying on Instagram. But the point of the matter is, it's making you sound like a complete and utter fool. The only reason I don't believe these people, I'm just going to keep it 100% real. The only reason you are even still on Instagram is because people are profiting off of your stupidity. They're making money.
True. Yeah, the trolls have been, and that's been known for a long time. The trolls have been feeding them to keep them creating content so that people can continue to cover them and get lulz out of it.
Money off of your stupidity. The little $2 and $3 that they give you. There are people on here that are making bank talking about you. Yeah, Esau sold his birthright for a bowl of soup. But Shanny, you sold your soul. You sold your soul for a cup of.
Give us their trust in the upcoming national elections. We are ready to exercise power to end mass migration, to prioritize purchasing power, ready to make France live again.
Oh, so they have nationalists taking control in France.
What's quite fascinating about these far right or these right-wing parties that keep on being brought into power, Meloni from Italy is one example. There's a lot of joy and from the Russian side and from, maybe it's not the Russian side, maybe it's the Westerners who are supporting the Russians, so to speak, that they all go, yay! And there's a lot of them supporting the AfD. There's a lot of them that support National Rally. But if they are far right, these are Russia's natural enemies, which might be why Meloni is particularly anti-Russian. Because Putin could very easily start talking about the Nazis or the fascists in any of these countries, irrespective who comes into power, but especially if they're far right. So the question is, are they far right? I don't know. What else is set here? So Hugh Schofield, reporting from Paris, says, calling a snap election is a huge...
Yeah, definitionally, if they're anti-immigration or whatever, then they're definitely far right.
surprise for the country and a huge risk for President Emmanuel Macron. He could have reacted differently. He could have just kept going, explaining the hard right's massive victory as a European aberration, which would be corrected at more important elections like national ones. He could have trusted the impending Euro Football Championship and, above all, the Paris Olympics to keep people's minds off politics for a couple of months. That was certainly how the Paris commentariat thought he would take his party's route. I think he meant route. Oh, no, route. Yeah, how he would take the way that his party was routed. Fell apart.
Okay. All right, well, that's still...
than to gain the knowledge that you need to go forward and understand the true requirements for freedom instead of staying on the peak of Mount Stupid, the left-hand side of the chart. As people progress in knowledge, they've labeled it competence. At the bottom of this, it would more accurately just be labeled knowledge. They finally say the phrase of all power, which is, I was wrong. This is why people can't say I was wrong, because their knowledge is so low. They're all the way on the left-hand side of the Dunning-Kruger effect chart. And they're living at the peak of Mount Stupid. They live on the summit of Mount Stupid to the left. Until you gain more knowledge, you will not be able to say, I was wrong. This involves different dynamics than I originally perceived and thought was all I needed to know. Then as you gain even more knowledge, you go down into what they call the Valley of Despair. The Valley of Despair means you have more knowledge and you're not a cocky, arrogant loser who believes you know everything you need to know, but you actually have less confidence because you can't really see the totality of the dynamics and how they all fit and work together. That's the people who refuse to listen to the entirety of this podcast series. They'll say, I can't be bothered with that. I don't have the time for that. So
if you refuse to listen to the entirety of this podcast series, you are in the Valley of Despair.
Social media, people saying, you have to actually, for you to understand, a couple of people ever, in the history of all of my social media, a tiny, tiny handful of people ever come to my defense when I'm attacked by morons living on the summit of Mount Stupid. But those who do say to these people, you can't just hear Mark's anger in isolation on one podcast. If you're trying to listen to one isolated tiny sliver, you're thin slicing without good intuitive capability. As I always tell people, don't rely on your intuition until you actually hone and develop it. And you guys should not rely on your intuition at all, because your intuition is in the shitter, boys and girls.
Okay. Love it. Love it, love it. All right, let's do Jim Bob. Make some headway in that video. We got about an hour in the last time. He still has it up. Oh, yeah, there it is. Cool.
This is also the way I...
I'm going to actually quickly now look at this stream.
This is also the way I...
I'm going to actually quickly now look at this stream. All right, so not bad. I think it seems to be working correctly.
The way I argue against people who think information is physical. It's similar. It's not identical, but it's similar. It reminds me of it because if someone says, if I ask for one example of where information about matter is identical to matter, I mean, it's like, it's hilarious to watch them squirm and try to do it. I mean, Leo Filius tried to say the electron. The electron. Okay, so the electron, it's basically a similar position that it's evident that the information we attribute to electron or some particular item in the physical is identical to the actual thing. And this is absurd. This is a silly thing. That would be like saying if I wrote help out of crabs, if I wrote the word help on the beach out of a bunch of crabs, that the information help would be found in the crabs.
10 minutes.
I don't think he's understanding the argument there. What they're saying, what Leo was trying to explain was that is the description that we give to the information of the particles that make up material things, right? So we can break each individual object down to its constituent parts, right? And so those descriptions are identical to the material, the constituent parts of that constitute the material thing we're talking about.
Of Jay's cross-examination. Now you're on. You can ask Jay any questions
you're
like.
on. Nice
you got
job,
10 minutes
Jay.
on the board. Let's do it.
So I'm curious where Jay
Or cry for Jay.
It gets any moral justification.
By the way, Jay, I'm happy that you weren't on the stage for that, because they would have done a zoom in on you and you would have been stuck. What face do I make? What do I do here? What do you do?
That is where value.
I mean, it's a good cry, though. I mean, listen to that. I mean, guys. I mean, I don't want to retire the capybara, right? See, war cry is different than the capybara. Well, I can use these interchangeably now. Capybara is like I've hit my limit, and the war cry is also I hit my limit. So now I have two. I might just collect. My stream deck might end up turning out to be just a whole collection of different yelling. I apologize in advance, but it seems to be the case that that's where it's heading.
Your judgments come from Jay. For Jay.
They're grounded ultimately in God, the existence of God.
So they're grounded in a fantasy in
Oh God. Oh. What a dick neck. That's why people are
So-
never going to.
Todd's covering J-Dubs. They've somehow infiltrated their Rumble streams. So they are still on. They just preview from YouTube and then they go over to Rumble. I usually watch Todd's commentary on them. It's pretty funny. But I think the last time he was over there, when I was watching, they porn bombed him. So that was good fun.
To take me seriously. I'm just too abrasive. You dick neck.
And make believe.
I mean, I guess the same type of make believe as your is odd distinction. Yeah.
Well, oh shit. Damn. Oh, damn. Surgical right there. That was a surgical. Oof. Oh, look at it. Look at the face. Look at Yarn. Oh, man.
Yeah, it's completely conflating two unrelated. Yeah.
Roasted.
Well, my is odd distinction is grounded in actual facts of reality and actually
Well, it
observing
wasn't grounded. It
reality.
was just asserted.
Observing reality, you're doing the same thing, right? But yours is grounded on pure emotions. So because
That's fallacious. Jay didn't mention I came to the knowledge or the position of God's existence because I feel emotional. Does Jay look emotional right now? No.
It doesn't matter if he looks emotional. The fact is, you can't prove biblical claims are true, so you just have to say, I feel like they're true. They're true to me. You can't verify it to a non-believer.
I mean, what the hell?
because your God. and
When
my
did
God,
I argue by emotion?
God
You little
is,
slippery
is whatever
pig
we
snake.
want it to be.
When did I argue by emotion?
Yeah, pig snake. Don't use pig snake tactics. You didn't do that.
I didn't argue by emotion.
You didn't even ask for an argument, Yorin. You should have said, "Oh, that's interesting. You think they're ground and God. Can you extrapolate on that? Can you present maybe some argumentation for it, or how you came to that as a conclusion?" No, he said, "Oh, you believe in fairy tales. You believe in fairy. You silly wascally please-supper."
Actually, since you mentioned God, you meant yogurt by emotion.
Why does
Well,
he
that's
keep
your
doing that?
definition of what you think God is. I
No,
don't
but
think that.
that is
I
God.
never
What
made
is-
an
what
argument
is
on the
God?
basis
Can
of
you make a
emotion.
rational argument
Appeal.
for God?
Yeah, the transcendental argument for
See,
God.
there you.
There is no transcendental argument for God. It is a purely emotionalistic. There's only all there is.
Hold on.
Why couldn't Jay just say your appeal to reasoning is just based on your emotion, the emotions you have about reasoning? You just really have this strong emotion. You know how squirrely that would be if Jay did that. Like, oh, you feel so strongly about your rationality. That's why you believe it. Ha! You little wascally wabbit.
You're saying that doesn't exist as an argument? I mean, you might not believe it, but it exists. You don't
I
even.
wouldn't say that.
Yeah,
I mean, I would say my rationality is the way that I navigate my feelings, right? The rationality is the thing that you use to identify feelings, and then you use logic to determine whether or not, like, your feelings about a situation are, like, warranted or unwarranted or valid or invalid, right? Like, internally critiquing your own feeling states. That's a product of a rational mind.
Argument exists. It's just again, it's a reduction to emotionalism. So
Where
so
in the
not.
transcendental argument?
What is he talking about? What a little worm.
There's
It's
no
reduction to
emotion in that
because
argument.
the only justification for God is you feel like there's a God, or you have.
No, nothing. He
How
said
tall do you
was
think
that.
Jim Bob is? 5'5", maybe?
That's just dishonest. This makes you look.
Is he like a
terrible,
really, really short dude? Probably has a big truck.
which is fine. But that's terrible,
Faith in a God, and you reject reason.
terrible.
And
No,
the
it's
reality
a
is-
rational argument. It's
the
a
reality
logical
is-
argument.
So
Do you want the form of the argument?
no, not particularly.
What a dork. So you appeal into emotion, Jay. No, I'm not. I have an argument. Well, I don't want to hear it, you widow. I'm gonna get you, Will.
How would emotion relate to the form?
Emotion relates to the fact that you
No,
don't
the
believe
form of the argument. X is the necessary
you're
condition of
making
Y.
up
Y therefore X.
is an emotionalistic argument, right?
It's not. X is the necessary condition of Y. Y therefore X. That's the form.
Now that's like now I haven't heard that actually. That's like probably the worst counter in all the counters I've ever heard to presup. You know, people say, well, it's circular, it's valid in its form, but I reject this premise or that premise. No, he's just going, you emotional
That's
widow.
literally how arguments work. If the premise is not accepted, you have to argue for the premise. You can't just force your interlocutor to accept your premises.
Jay.
Form, there's no emotion.
Now, at some point, there's like, there'd be no point in having an argument if you can't come to some agreement, like on premise one, right? Like, you can't move into premise two. It doesn't even make sense. So you have to find some way to come to like a point of accepting some fact to move through that first premise.
Does logic come from?
Logic itself is grounded in God.
Is grounded in God. So it's a circular argument and it's meaningless, right?
No, it's not meaningless.
Right. So
Well,
no, there's an argument for logic coming from God that's not circular. I mean, it doesn't tell you who God is, so it's not entirely sufficient to a particular.
That's why people will often say in debates, if they feel strongly that they can argue the second position, right? They'll say, well, I'll accept premise one for the sake of the argument. Meaning I don't actually accept it, but I can still argue against premise two regardless.
Theology, but it's at least a good bridge. And it would go something like the laws of logic are conceptual and absolute, and concepts are mind dependent, and the laws of logic precede the human mind. So, no, we can't make a full jump to who-ness, but we can certainly make an argument for mind dependency of the laws of thought that precede the human existence, from their view, by the way. Evolutionary story of creation. So if the laws of logic were conceptual and absolute and were in effect, they held true before the human mind could, then absolute concepts, it's reasonable to say absolute concepts require an absolute mind. Humans can't create and generate absolute concepts. Ooh, whoa.
Once you have God, then once you have the emotionalistic belief in God, then you come up with a circular argument to justify it, which is absurd, right? So,
I can't help it.
The whole perspective
Pray for me.
Of value judgments as coming in because J believes in them or because X believes in something else is the basis.
I never made that argument.
Complete
That's not
subjective.
Now the irony here is that a self-evident position is circular. That's the irony here. And so he's just projecting, whether he knows it or not. He's definitely projecting, because if you don't appeal ultimately to faith and God,
A self-evident position is something that can't be denied in virtue of itself, right? Like, water is wet, right? Like, based on the definitions we apply it to the thing we're talking about, definitionally, water is wet. That is self-evident.
and a top-down epistemic system. Because Yaren...
Wait, I'd be wrong. Water is not... So, the thing... Yeah, water makes the thing wet. I don't know. Something like that.
He's not even...
I guess it'd be closer to, like, water is a liquid, but that's just,
No offense to Yaren, which is funny because I'm making fun of his the way he talks. No offense to his intellect. He would get absolutely destroyed if he could even engage with, let's say a dilemma between theonomous and autonomous reasoning and rationality and knowledge. Because from his view, knowledge is bottom up and it's spawned forth from a bunch of objects in space at the micro level and a macro level. They're just it's some sort of combustion. That thinking and reasoning is a combustion system. I'm going to use that more.
What? A combustion system? Wasn't he the one who was making the comparison to a motor vehicle on Speed's channel?
You know, because it's like this giant energy engine called nature and laws. And there are these
he's talking about nature. Before he was talking like about a human body.
Right? Still to this day, by the way, all you atheists
Or a brain, more accurately.
Still can't counter my arguments against atheism, episode 1. Still to this day. That from this naturalistic view, from a purely rational view, rationalism, your own view states that rationalism emerges from pure matter. I mean, how insane is that? And that's why you have to come up with terms like emergent prop.
Rationalism emerges from pure matter. No. That's just false. I think we went over this before, though.
Properties and all these mystical takes that have no metaphysical foundations. It's just New Age. It's basically the scientismo approach, circling back and going back through time and taking sort of like these New Age takes about where there's something called emergent property that somehow, you know, not supernatural. It sits above it. It's percolates from. It comes forth from. It pours. And it's just, you might as well be a New Ager.
But it is, right?
Well, I mean, if you're gonna, you should at least address the actual argument. That's not the argument. That's a straw man.
Okay, so give me some example of value judgments that come from God, and how do they get to you?
Presuppositions that we all hold to, basic beliefs when it comes to ethics, metaphysics,
That
and
you get from where?
And ultimately, those structures are grounded in the mind of God.
And how do they imprint on you?
Well, I'm made in God's image, so I have the ability to reason after God.
So the entire system is built on a presupposition that there is a God.
Correct.
Yeah, but it's also a presupposition that can be argued because both interlocutors have to, if their own view must
see, and the problem here is like even if so when you're talking about grounding, right, you're talking about presupposition that, you know, all these presuppositions are based on the claim that there is a God, right, which you can't prove or verify, right? So, and a naturalist position would say that all these presuppositions are based on observations of a natural world that we can verify, we experience every day.
Why truth existed. What is truth? Well, from this guy's view, truth is just, you know, the Dillahunty approach. That which comports with reality. If the person is in my bed, comports with reality, therefore they are a woman. It doesn't matter that they clearly have a man butthole, which is descriptively different than a female butthole. Sorry.
He's attacking Matt's partner right now. It's trans.
It's funny, but that's their basis for truth, is some sort of standard that describes reality, and then you go, what's reality? And then you get a T-dump response. Reality is reality. So from their view, the truth is percolating up in some sort of agreement of propositions only. Well, no, that can't be it, because the truth of reality is that we have a mind. So Yaron, right? If I don't know if Jay gets to it, but it would be interesting to see what Yaron says a mind is under his view. Where is reasoning? Is it determined? Right? Where do you get? Ask Yaron that, because Yaron, where do you get the, you know? How do you get knowledge?
There's reasoning exists on like a spectrum, right? Because there is good reasoning and there is bad reasoning. There is flawed reasoning, right? So there is a spectrum of reasoning. Reasoning itself is not absolute.
of these things. Well, no, you don't, from your view, which is sense data, you don't even have knowledge of the brain or the mind. Isn't that fascinating? The person who appeals to self-evident truths and then appeals to things out there in the world like sense data and objects in space and relations and all this stuff, they can't even point to those things to justify the thing that's evaluating those things. So sense data is how we know. Reasoning is how we know. How did you do that for your own mind? The evaluator of the evaluator.
That's why every day you try to, like, you get up in the morning, you have an experience, you try to figure out if it makes sense, your responses to situations, you know.
Autonomous.
Just like your system is built on self-evident presuppositions that are incoherent.
No self-evident. All it relies on is the fact that existence exists.
The fact that existence exists.
And
he just said, no, it's not, but I'm going to literally say a sentence that existence. I mean, if that doesn't sound like
the
a
statement that a thing exists, right? Jesus. Existence doesn't exist. Everything that is in existence exists because that's what existence means. Non-existence means to not exist.
Evident position. Go and follow the
A discussion with somebody who wouldn't just affirm, you know, that obviously we're talking about things that exist in reality.
Confused, I guess, with. Remember, Mr. Anderson came on and he said that it's justified to think tomorrow is going to be like today. That's backwards. Now, from a Christian, I forget where I was going with that.
You mean like the spiritual realm, like angels and demons and such?
So, you know, why don't I just do this?
So they're just demons in disguise.
I don't believe it's self-evident. Explain to me what.
It's faith-based.
Where does the knowledge that we're talking right now come from?
Right? So now he has to justify mind. So you have to say where does knowledge come from Yaron's position, which is every atheist position, basically. You know, to ask where does knowledge come from is to then ask where does mind come from. And to say knowledge comes from mind, but mind comes from matter. You're saying matter produces.
Well, mind is material. Like, well, no, a brain is material. So yeah, mind is produced by brain as an organ.
Two immaterial things.
We're talking is experiential. I believe in experience.
How does matter produce immaterial?
Experience is not self-evident?
No.
Then where does it
process? It's a reaction, right?
Come from? How do you know it's actually happening?
Because, well, again, there's nothing that's self-evident. Because I'm having experience, it doesn't follow that the experience or having experiences is self-evident. That's a whole other notion in epistemology that has to do with things that don't require justification. Two different questions.
Same question.
Yeah, it is the same question. So he's just acknowledged that it doesn't require justification. Like so that's a valid presupposition.
It's really not, though.
The reality is that
I believe, now I'm not thoroughly trained, but first order questions about knowledge and second order are not identical.
Existence of everything around us is self-evident, and everything we are talking about, everything we say.
So the first question is that exists, and then then the second would be conversation about what exists. But the statement that exists is what's in question, which is not the same as the second one.
Are you aware of
on the fact that existence actually exists?
Well, again, that's just to assert a circle. Which, if you want to,
no, it's not. It's you. Every
concept. It is a circle.
I think, therefore, I am. thought itself into reality. So this is what's so fascinating about this, right? Is that if you take Yaron's approach, which essentially is a naturalistic view, when you really get down to it, right? It's not really grounded in Ayn Rand philosophy when you really push, right? Who's the guy? His name is Yaron Brook. He's the and so forth. When you really push him on these things, he basically is making the world itself like a being, like reality is its own intelligent being that self-evident itself into reality, right? And Jay's pushing him on epistemology and metaphysics, and he's falling apart because the same statements he has for his metaphysics he has for his epistemology, and he doesn't see that they're separated.
No, reality is just that which is real, right? That which is real exists. What's absurd is to try to make the secondary claim that some entity must have created reality or the state of existence, right? But that entity must exist outside of existence, right? It's an extraordinary claim. Not to parrot Matt Dillahunty, but hello.
He's conflating the two. He's also making them identical to matter, because that's the thing that's telling him things are real. It's insane. I mean, now keep in mind the three branches that make up a worldview are entangled, but not in a messy way necessarily, but they're, let's say, not entangled. They're branches of a root. They require a root. You can't just pick up your epistemology branch of your worldview or pointing to your metaphysical and your ethical, by the way. You can't escape that they're tied together. And Yaron, the question that Jay's asking is collapsing the guy's views, because he has the same answers for every. Developed a logical relation between his epistemology, his metaphysics, the common problem. Well, I mean, of course, from my perspective, every view but Christianity, but definitely a libertarian view. Like, if there's any view that's seemingly somehow popular still, right, that is so broken, it would be libertarianism. I don't know if I can name a worse view. If it that's no.
I agree a bit on this, although I lean somewhat libertarian. There are aspects of it that are very difficult to justify beyond how I feel things should be or whatever.
That's like known. It's not like some obscure view. Libertarianism is definitely brutal. Simply not understanding the origin of knowledge is not sufficient evidence for the proof of the creator. Well, no, the Anson knowledge itself would be immaterial. So you already reject naturalism, right? Knowledge is immaterial and conceptual. It's mind dependent. So if knowledge and truth go hand in hand, and truth is conceptual, well, there are all these preconditions before a human mind, from Yaron's view, that are necessary. So now you have to deal with the fact that things like knowledge, or let's say truth, let's say the laws of logic, these things are discovered, so they precede us. Now, if you say knowledge is created, then it's arbitrary and it's relativism. There's only two options. Either knowledge and truth and reasoning is bottom up and it's created, which makes it arbitrary and not absolute, or it's absolute and it precedes us. And if it precedes us, you've necessitated a higher mind, an absolute mind. It doesn't tell you who, so it's not the greatest argument. It's not a knockdown argument for, let's say, Christianity, but it's a knockdown argument against the alternative, which is autonomous, bottom-up, truth is created. No, truth is discovered. Math is discovered. Logic as
Wait. Are you now saying that truth is discovered? Because earlier Yarn was saying that truth is discovered and you were laughing at him. Pretty sure.
Write them as laws. Classical laws are discovered. Okay. Otherwise, knowledge is a fiction, a figment, and then this is ultimately what this guy's view turns into, is that we pretend truth exists for pragmatic reasons. We pretend to come to the table to debate that there's some truth in it because it's workable.
Oh, he was trying to steal that and to mock his position, but he's misrepresenting. So.
What Jay asked from the very beginning. Toward what? It's teleological. 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 And it's true. It is teleological. Yeah, Matt Tilawonki remains unconvinced. Teleological.
Hey, Gio, good to see you.
Evidence.
Every concept they use depends on the fact that
that was a straw man. I'm not denying that
I'm
logic.
only going to spend a few more minutes on this asshole, then I had something else I wanted to look at.
Well, I didn't say you did. I'm just saying I wasn't focusing on what you said. What you said prompted a larger thing, Anson, is that logic and knowledge go hand in hand. You can't have knowledge without logic. Logic is conceptual and mind dependent and precedes humans. So how are you? There aren't many views. I mean, that's just what you have to deal with. So if you reject that, if you accept that logic exists conceptually and precedes human mind now, and you accept that premise too, that it's mind dependent, now all you have to do is accept that it's absolute. That is to say, the laws of at least the three classical laws, law of identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle, aren't something you can undo. They're not conventions. They existed.
Wait. What about accepting that as mind dependent means that you have to? I don't understand why you'd have to accept it as an absolute.
They held true. The law of identity.
How does that logically follow?
Before we described it.
It's dependent on the mind. It's dependent on each individual mind. So therefore, subjective.
But it's conceptual. It's not found as objects. So then you have to figure out. You have to figure out how are you gonna justify absolute conceptions.
What?
How are you
You don't have to justify absolute conceptions.
an immaculate conception for these things?
That's immaculate conception.
They spawn forth as emergent properties. It's a miracle. A miracle in nature.
Those concepts were integrated based
on.
on.
Only a Christian would call it miraculous. I don't know, maybe other religious people, but yeah, no, sir, not miraculous.
They bring up the Mandelbrot.
Yeah, Christian Carpenter. I was just saying that I'm gonna wrap up the Jim Bob segment and move on to something else here in a minute. I can only tolerate so much, and I only have so much time today. But yeah, good to see you.
You look at a child and you see how a child forms concepts. They don't form concepts by some revelation from God. They form concepts by observing reality and experimenting within reality and seeing similarities. Ground up from reality up. They don't start with God and everything.
Well, that's a category error. The fact that you start with something doesn't mean that that's the ultimate grounding for the thing. So that's a category.
Well, you can't understand a thing without knowing where it's coming from.
Again, this is a terrible position. He's essentially saying because we need air to perturbate sound to make words, therefore I don't need to justify air anymore. or how this is the case, how the regularity of nature permits such things.
Right. This is a statement of fact about the way that the world works and the way we function. Why, yeah, I mean, you can explain it further, but if you're making that statement and you're saying, okay, based upon that statement, I can make some other statement that follows that, right? Then based on this premise, we can argue whatever the next position is, right? I don't understand what
That, you know, Jay's just sitting there waiting, just waiting for any justification from this guy. Anything, please. For goodness gracious, please. Pod stream. Glenn Lawrence, friend of Andrew's, work.
I'm describing is he's throwing a wrench in the gears, right? So the conversation can't even proceed. He's trying to make him justify a claim that he's not even making.
I would love to, Siege. Thank you for letting me know. I would love to be a part of that. Appreciate that. I'll check in with him, or he can have an email made by Jimbob at Gmail.
I don't disagree with empirical sense data. I just don't think that empirical sense data is the limit. That is all we have, and you can't justify empiricism itself.
I'm not going to justify empiricism, because the reality is that we can't abstract from empirical sense data, and we do have a mind, we do have consciousness. But
you understand those are your bedrock positions that you just assert.
Like Jay said early on, this guy is a machine gun assertion machine. He's an assertion machine. Now my alerts, I have to figure them out. I'm going back over to my my Bob chats. I'm gonna read some so I don't forget you guys. Okay, $10 Bob chat from Magdalene says, a token of thanks.
Hey, Viking Silverwolf, good to see you.
For agreeing not to have the Thorpes on again. Yeah, amen to that. Just
yeah. So I was watching a one of these recently. He let Grace in, and I didn't really see how that went. But speaking of which, let's see what I got in here. I don't know, maybe I did not save it. Okay. Let's just do one of these. Something short. See what this is all about.
Recordings just got better. Hey, it's Dana from StreamYard. I'm so excited to announce that
celebrating something that needs to be celebrated.
Of the standard Islamic narrative, holes in the narrative, SIN. Remember what happened 4 years ago? Well, to understand what happened 4 years ago, you're going to have to go back to 2016. Because in 2016, and we're going to put the video up right here,
there is only one Quran, right? And that every Quran in the world is the same. That's what you've been told. You have been told a lie. Okay, so there are two Qurans today, right? Two.
More than two Qurans.
More than two? 3 Qurans?
Oh. More than 3 Qurans.
More than 3? 4 Qurans?
There are approximately 26 of the Qurans.
26 different Qurans.
attention. Don't give
Your faces! Muslim people! Your face from here! Come!
What they're showing you, don't listen to what they're saying. I'll explain it to you. This is June of 2016.
Wait. Is this the same Muhammad Hijab who've been going around telling everyone about the perfect dot-for-dot, letter-for-letter preservation of the Quran?
That's
that
it.
guy?
Now, why does he have to say that? Why is it perfectly preserved? Because the Quran says that in chapter 85. Chapter 85, verse 21 and 22. But it's not just that. It says it has never changed. That's in chapter 10, verse 15, chapter 18, verse 27. And why does it never change? Because Allah himself guards it in chapter 15, verse 9. So don't get upset with Muhammad Hijab. He has to say that. Everybody has said that.
He's being a good Muslim.
Being a good Muslim.
Being a good Muslim.
Obviously something happened, though, in 2016.
What?
He didn't say much, did he? He didn't have much to tell them, did he?
No.
So 4 years later, he needed help, didn't he?
Yeah.
So who did he go to?
He went to Sheikh Yasser Qadhi, because the interesting thing that happened was, for years you got the Dawah fans, they go to their Dawah guy. The Dawah guy tells them perfect preservation right down to the letter. They believe that. A Christian tells them otherwise. They don't listen to the Christian. Who are you going to listen to? You're going to listen to a Christian, you're going to listen to your Dawah guy. So they listen to the Dawah guy, and that went back and forth until it was actually put in their faces. And what's amazing is these same Dawah fans will go back to their Dawah guy. Hey, you said perfect letter for letter, dot for dot preservation, but she actually showed us the copies. What's going on here? They keep going to him, and eventually he had to solve the problem.
Why him specifically? Because he is the only one that's got a doctorate from Yale University on this very subject.
He literally wrote the book on the sciences of the Quran.
1995, he got his doctorate. So we're now in 2020, so we're talking about 20.
Mazhar Qazi was one of the people who popularized. I have Dawah books by Mazhar Qazi saying there has never been one letter's difference between any two Qurans in the history of the Quran. So he was raised, Yasser Qadhi was raised to believe this.
And he said it many times. In fact, we're going to show you right here a clip.
Remain uncorrupted, untouched, and unchallenged until the day of judgment.
So he comes to him hoping that maybe he can answer. And you phoned me up and says, Jay, you got to watch this. But you didn't know what was going to happen, did you? I didn't know what was going to happen. And we were shocked by what happened. What happened next?
That was one of the greatest moments in the history of Dawah. Apologetics, polemics, everything all rolled into one. This was Muhammad Hijab trying to, he really seemed to think that Yasser Qadhi is going to fix all of this. Yeah. I'm talking to Yasser Qadhi. This is the man. He's the expert of the experts. He will explain how somehow there's just one Quran. He's going to make it clear.
So what did he do first?
He
put out his hand. Remember, he put out his hand. He said, listen, this is a blank sheet of paper. Tell me,
blank Musaf.
Which one? Which is the one that you're going to put on there? Which is the one that's the eternal Quran? Yeah. Which is the one that was revealed to Muhammad? Which is the one that Uthman wrote in 652? Tell me, which is it? The Hafs? Is it the Warsh? Is it the Hitkizai? Before he could answer, before he could stop his sentence, what did Yasser Qadhi say?
Said, it's not an easy question.
That's right.
Which it should be. If there's one Quran perfectly preserved, that should be the easiest question in the history of humanity. And it wasn't. But yeah, you saw in that interview, Yasser Qadhi basically begging Muhammad Hijab to stop.
Off the camera.
Stop it. Yeah, I'll talk to you afterwards. Please stop. This is not wise, Yaqi. It's not wise. They're going to be hearing this. Muhammad Hijab continuing to press him because Hijab clearly thought, no, I need to keep pushing. I need to keep pushing. Then he'll explain how all this fits together and there's only been one Quran.
Say first. He said, remember, Al-Jazari, who is the world authority on the Quran, he wrote 80 books in the 1500s, and he never came to a conclusion. For the last 1,000 years, he said, the Muslim scholars don't know what to do with this question. If they don't know what to do with this question, what do you think I'm going to have to do with this question? And then he said one interesting thing. It should be an easy question. Is this what happened to you when you were at Yale University? Did you have a crisis of faith? He said, no, not a crisis of faith, crisis of knowledge. And then he did a very interesting thing. He held the Quran up, and he says, we have a respect for this Quran. We have a red line beyond which we don't go. There are certain questions we don't ask of this book. But at Yale University, there are no red lines.
Yeah, the non-Muslim scholars don't have those lines.
And what did he say about the Western scholars?
He said, he said, as Muslims, when we raise a question and someone gives us an answer, we just accept it.
Right.
And he said, the Western academics, they'll keep pushing. They'll keep pushing. And then he made this amazing admission. He said, and we know they're right because they're quoting our sources. So he's acknowledging that Muslims are accepting answers on why they have all these differences in the Quran.
What did he say about Muhammad Hijab? He says, you in the East, are looking at you as if like
the little victory lap there. It's not as if Christians don't do the same thing. Okay, so I saw something pop I want to check out. Let's go give Bro Joe a like and we'll go check out this other video here.
No. And he didn't pull up.
Over there. Excellent. All right, I want to check this out.
We all remember in the post 9/11 era, there was this
This is
rise of
from
new
Atheist Republic, Kyle Kulinski versus Sam Harris on Hamas.
atheism. You had people like Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens. And look, I'd be lying if I said I didn't agree with a lot of what they wrote. I mean, The God Illusion, I think, was a great book from Richard Dawkins. He was like the least political of them. But Christopher Hitchens, God is Not Great. I didn't like that book as much as The God Illusion, but he used to be a socialist, and then he became a pretty ardent neocon in his older years, and he was for the war in Iraq. He kind of like was defending Bush when nobody else was defending Bush. So Hitchens kind of lost his way. And Sam Harris, he
yeah, completely dismiss a person based on one take that you disagree with. You know, like, oh, lost his way. You know, ignore 90% of the work that this man has done, and I have one disagreement with him on one of his takes, and I'm just going to completely throw the guy out. Lost his way completely. Okay, sure. That's a very black.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on what particular thing. Like, there's certain certain values that's very difficult to continue to support a person's work in any way if they hold certain values and like actively promote them, even if it's, you know, unrelated to the other work.
And white approach.
He was
hyper-political. I think that has to be pretty extreme. Like if somebody is like actually a National Socialist, you know, or something like that.
And wrote a lot about like foreign policy stuff. Torture, of course, he wrote about, and he defended it in.
Who defended torture?
Stuff.
You talking about Sam Harris?
He was hyper-political in his older years, and he was for the war in Iraq. He kind of like was defending Bush when nobody else was defending Bush. So Hitchens kind of lost his way. And Sam Harris, he was hyper-political and wrote a lot about like foreign policy stuff. Torture, of course, he wrote about, and he defended it in during the war on terror in the wake of.
Okay, that is an insane take on what Sam Harris has said. That is such a bad faith. That's such a straw man of misrepresentation. Defending torture, Sam Harris does examination of moral dilemmas, right? So I don't know. Let me know, guys, in the live chat. I think a lot of you might disagree on this, but you would understand that it's not a very hot take if you say that
it was defending it under certain very specific circumstances.
in a situation, if hypothetically you have a situation that torturing one person will get you an information that will save millions of lives, as bad as torture is, would it make sense to torture that person to get the information that will save millions of lives? That is a dilemma that a lot of people exercise and talk about when they're doing moral philosophy, as Sam Harris does moral philosophy. So some people will say, yes, torture is horrible, but in that situation, maybe the cost of not torturing is so high that it would justify it. And some people will have a more principled approach and be like, no, let tens of millions of people die and don't torture anybody. But again, whatever side you're on, it's not a really hot take for you to say, yeah, torture one person and save 10 million. That is not defending and acting like somebody is pro-torture by examining that hypothetical situation and saying like, yes, there are certain situations, because nothing is black and white. We are, doing utilitarianism. There are specific situations why it might make sense, as much as we want to be against it. And even if you disagree with that, that is not something that you could simplify as being pro-torture. That is such a straw man. That's such a bad faith misrepresentation of what man's arguments are. Anyways, let's continue.
9/11.
But you can see that approach. Like when Sam Harris talked about this, he has gone through a lot of detail and explained this and re-explained this and came back and re-explained it to people who were misrepresenting this for years. And even
this
after
is one of those issues where people will quote line from him and take like a soundbite, 30 seconds of somebody saying like totally out of context, and then go and propagate those to make it appear as though this is his position.
This mofo feels like it's completely moral to just come drop that line and basically poison the well before he even gets to what Sam Harris is saying. This is poisoning the well. Let's continue. It's hard not to with this guy, though.
And now he's hitting his stride again, hitting a lot of those same talking points with what's happening in Gaza at the moment. And man, it is hard to listen to. Like, incredibly simplistic, and I don't mean that in a positive way. It is.
We'll see about that. We'll see. Okay, so let's take the point. It's okay. The analysis is simplistic. The analysis by Sam Harris is simplistic. Okay. By the way, the whole disagreement. This is about Hamas. If you have missed the title, right? So this is Sam Harris has made a comment about Hamas being worse than Nazis. And let's see what Kyle has to say about it.
Ironic, because he would accuse others of being like.
So this is the same thing that Pocket Locker was covering, and Majority Report over there, and all those guys.
Blind or morally confused. I think he is the height of moral confusion. So here he is. He's going to make quite a claim here about Hamas, and of course the Nazis get dragged into it. Listen to this.
Overwhelming majority of people who are this confused about how to live good lives are Islamic extremists, and the worst of these are jihadists. Now, Hamas is a jihadist organization.
Right off the bat here, that's not really the full picture, is it, Sam?
How on earth could you have a problem with that? Because the only claim that has been made here is Hamas is a jihadist organization. How on earth could you have a problem with that? I wonder, how on earth could anybody disagree with this? Like, yeah, Susie is saying in the lecture, where's the lie? Guys, I'm not misrepresenting, because the first sentence he has a problem with. There's no way this is wrong. There's no way this is wrong. Listen to what Sam Harris has said. And if you guys tell me, these people act like they're not Hamas sympathizers. Tell me.
Yeah, and that's they often conflate those two things. Like, okay, so anytime an organization or whatever, a group that supports jihadists, right, and then you speak against them, well, then all of a sudden you're anti-Muslim, you're Islamophobic, right, is the way that it gets translated out.
By the end of this show, if they're not actually Hamas sympathizers, if they're not defending a terrorist organization, let's see what Sam Harris said, and this is the first line that he has a problem with.
Hamas, and of course the Nazis get dragged into it. Listen to this.
Overwhelming majority of people who are this confused about how to live good lives are Islamic extremists, and the worst of these are jihadists. Now, Hamas is a jihadist organization.
Right off the bat here, that's not really the full picture, is it, Sam? It's not enough to just say, well, Hamas are jihadists, full stop. Like, that is right?
What nuance and complexity and detail would make that any difference? With nuance and complexity and detail, you will have more reason to believe that there are jihadists. What are you talking about? Let's see what he's talking about. Let's continue.
We're clear on that, right? Like an actual jihadist organization, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, their goal is global caliphate.
Wait, he says, he's saying they're not a jihadist organization. He says an actual jihadist organization like Al-Qaeda and ISIS. So by calling Al-Qaeda and ISIS actual jihadists, Kyle is saying Hamas is not jihadist. And not Hamas. Unbelievable. These people always want to separate Hamas from ISIS and Al-Qaeda. They always want to like, no. These people are defending Hamas. I'm telling you, they're defending Hamas. Why would ISIS, based on Kyle, why would Hamas and ISIS be jihadists and not Hamas? We'll see.
Right? Like an actual jihadist organization, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, their goal is global caliphate. That's their goal. That is not Hamas's goal.
That's not the definition of jihadist.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, it's not true. It's not true that Hamas doesn't want a global caliphate. They do want, their immediate goals are different. Just like, here's the thing, just like ISIS' immediate goals are different. Just like Al-Qaeda's immediate goals were different. Hamas also wants a global caliphate. But even if it didn't, it wouldn't make it not jihadist. Guys, guess what would make you a jihadist? What would make you a jihadist? I have a hint for you. It's in the name. It's doing jihad. If you do jihad, you're a jihadist. Okay? Based on what definition Kyle has went and dug from where that you have to want with the aim of a global caliphate, doing jihad makes you a jihadist. No, Kyle, just doing jihad makes you a jihadist. What did you think a jihadist is? A jihadist is somebody who does jihad. Idiot. And here's the thing. Let him continue. Maybe he has some nuance that I'm not missing here.
They want Palestine to be a country, and they want it to be governed ambitions. In the same way, like, you know, like the Houthis, for example. Putting them on the terror list, it was preposterous because they're not going to do terror attacks against the West because they're trying to form a...
They did. They did. The Houthis do it. Oh, it's preposterous to put terrorists on a terror list. And like, they're not going to do terror attacks against the West. They did terror attacks against the West. They attacked Western civilians. Well, not just... First of all, how selfish do you have to be for you to only consider an organization a terrorist group if they attack the West? They have to only attack Westerners for them to be terrorists? And also, they did attack everybody. They attacked everybody. They attacked civilians, Japanese, Koreans, Muslim, Arab, Israeli. They done a terrorist attack on most of the globe. They're waiting for ships to just pass around their area, and they're attacking them. How is that not a terrorist group? Unbelievable. I didn't expect it to get extra idiotic this fast. But let's go to the first point, that they're not a jihadist group because they don't want a caliphate, right? So let's go to that. Play that again.
Like, that is purposefully leaving out a lot of nuance and complexity and detail, right? We're clear on that, right? Like, an actual jihadist organization, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, their goal is global caliphate. That's their goal. That is not Hamas's goal.
All right. That is not Hamas's goal, right? First of all, even if it wasn't their goal, I will show you that they want to do jihad, and they themselves say that they want to do jihad, and they're proud of doing jihad. But even if this weird, bizarre definition that Kyle is coming up with for what makes you a jihadist, by the way, this is not the definition that Muslims agree with it either. You could basically, based on many Muslims, you could be sitting home and be behind your computer and just like doing struggle against the enemies of Islam on your keyboard, and you would be a jihadist. So their definition of who's a jihadist is a lot broader. I don't know why Kyle, why are you imposing your Western perspective on who's a jihadist on Muslims? Like, who gave you the permission to tell Muslims what is jihad and what's not jihad? Where did you get this definition from? Because this is not definition of Muslims. But again, let me just play this last part because I really want to show how wrong he is right after he says it. Because it's just so beautiful, okay? It's just so beautiful. Guys, you have to show this to a lot of people because I'm going to show you how wrong he is. It's just so beautiful.
Good evening. The Soviet Union is no more. Despite a potential for
Okay. I thought I saw something else over there. I think I'm good on that. Done with that video. Dun, 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 dun. And I won't have near enough time to cover that. I did watch this full commentary by Apologetics Roadshow on the Matt Dillahunty, Andrew Wilson thing. Oh yeah, there it is.
Shapes and colors. Then you'll know. There won't
I'm
be.
not going to cover Todd too long, but I do recommend his channel if you're into the trash fire stuff.
Ain't denying it then. Pardon me. Somebody messaged me on Steam saying, it's that's Cisco.
Oh, Cisco, lovely. But he's telling on me.
Todd is apparently
You're
sniping
late,
us
Cisco.
again.
You're late, Cisco.
By the way,
Shit. I might get corn bombed again. Way past. Good old Robert.
throw it out like Christian in a ship. We're done, baby. But I wait, and they gonna crack. And when they crack, I go, it wasn't me, bitch. You know what I mean? It wasn't me. I didn't smoke. You the one said you want to get a hit. But a real woman that don't smoke, that I meet, that I love, I think I can stop. I really do. I have stopped. Like I stopped for my wife. Like I stopped for another woman. I can stop. Because right now, as long as I've been in here, somebody been like, cut, I want to hit, bitch. I don't have to smoke. I really don't, if I'm in the right surroundings.
If you find a good woman.
Yeah. You know what I mean? A good woman and her surroundings, I don't desire it like that. I don't just have an attitude of, man, I want me something. I want to hit. I don't really give a fuck. I swear to God, you might think I can smoke and I don't go, you know what I mean? I can smoke and I want to laugh and joke. I want to play cards and dominoes. If I don't have it, it's okay. I swear to God it is. But sometimes if everybody in the house is, I don't want to be around a bunch of people because if I steal for a living and I walk in the house where all you doing is sitting on your ass, and when I walk in, Robert, give me a hit. Robert, give me a hit. Robert, give me some of that drink. You got $1? It pisses me off because, bitch, I can go to jail for what I'm doing. And you just sitting there doing this. Robert, give me a hit. You want some? Bitch, no. That it makes me mad, so I walk around and looking for a bitch or a punk. I'll be walking around then because I don't want to go to the house I'm staying in. So that's what I had a tent. I bought a tent. I'll take that back. I stole a tent. My bad. I ran out the back door, a big fire with a nice tent, and put it in the back of the apartments that my homeboy stayed in. So I had a tent with my blanket, and I didn't have no telephone. I had no radio. I had no TV. I didn't have shit. So I can hear people coming if I'm in there jacking off. Because that's man, I jerk my dick so much, I can hear them close the gate and coming down the stairs. I go, damn, put my pants back on. Yeah, what is it? Rob, you got a bump? No, I ain't got one. Okay. To play with. I ain't got shit else to do. But my crack lasts so long because I'm jacking my dick with my right hand. I can't hold no pipe. So I put my pipe in the ashtray, a good hit, and I go, and I jack my dick, and I'm fantasizing about whoever the fuck I want to be with. And then they took my fucking tent. They took my tent.
Crack's one hell of a drug.
Yeah, but crack didn't take my tent. The manager took it. And I don't like jacking off in the bathroom, so I need a nut right now. I'm sorry. Oh, my bad, man. I'm just bullshitting.
All right, Robert. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Oh, man, thank you so much for asking me, and I appreciate it, brother. I really do.
Yeah, man.
All right, so...
Hello. Hello. All the
That's
natural
right.
exists.
I've heard you have nothing to base it on.
Back
Yes.
in an alien spaceship, resurrected him.
Nerdy.
Them like two. Resurrected himself. Yeah, someone go. Yeah.
That's funny.
I can't let him forget that. And Christian Carpenter. Right, this is not a cock meat sandwich. I'll explain to you. Right, I'll make myself full screen. Just one sec.
Yeah, it's vegetarian. It's just cock meat flavored.
It's pilchards. Do you know like a potato? That's the potato part.
Oh.
With pilchards in it. You know pilchards like fish.
Okay.
And then cheese on top.
So potato with fish and cheese?
Yeah.
Oh, I never had that before.
It's really nice actually. Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah. Let's make that one day. Check it out. I'm crispy.
And welcome to Sushi. Good to see you, man.
I love that. So my question is, if Jesus can walk on water, then can he swim on land?
Sandworm.
Food sounds good right about now. Making me hungry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but this is really, really good. Right. We can put that aside for.
What time is it? Oh, 2 o'clock. We'll come back to this later.